What you're seeing is the result of an international diplomatic battle between Mexico and Japan that became national news in both countries. In early March 2018, a group of university students in Ciudad Juarez decided to organize a public screening of Dragon Ball Super Episode 130, featuring the highly anticipated showdown between Goku and Jiren. Things quickly escalated when the city mayor joined in, turning it into an official government event as a way to score some points with the locals. Unfortunately, no one informed Toei Animation, the world's largest anime studio, which produces the Dragon Ball anime and holds partial rights to the franchise. Toei responded by sending a cease and desist letter to the Mexican government for copyright violation. What started as an isolated event in a relatively small city rapidly became national news, launching an uproar and a nationwide boycott campaign against Dragon Ball related products and other Toei properties. For a moment, no one knew exactly what would happen until March 15th of that year, 2 days before the original illegal screening was supposed to take place. The Ciudad Juarez government announced that Toei had agreed to allow the showing of the latest Dragon Ball Super chapter, even though they were within their rights to refuse. There was celebration across the country, and in the end, more than 20,000 people gathered to watch Goku and Jiren's fight. You see, to us Mexicans, Dragon Ball is much more than just an anime. It's practically a religion at this point. You might think I'm exaggerating, but you'd be wrong. We have restaurants, popular songs, and even Christmas parades dedicated to Goku and his friends. When Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, passed away, the nation went into mourning. Azteca 7, the second most popular channel in the country, aired a 24-hour marathon of all Dragon Ball movies in his memory, something that had only been done a few times before and only for their biggest stars. I even know of some businesses that closed in his honor. There's even a meme suggesting that crime rates in Mexico drop whenever something new from Dragon Ball is released. Although I have no evidence to back up this idea, the fact is that I live near Tijuana, literally the most dangerous city in the world outside of active war zones. And on those Saturday nights, the city felt noticeably calmer and a heck of a lot safer. So, why does this happen? Why is Mexico obsessed with Dragon Ball? What makes this series so special, and why not another? How does this relate to Mexico's development as a country, its current state, World War II, and Japan's secret propaganda strategy to clean its image after the atrocities committed during the war? And how did this influence the way anime reached us here, causing our experience of Dragon Ball to differ completely from the way you experienced it growing up? Our story begins in 1964 with Astro Boy, which became the first anime broadcast in Mexican history just 1 year after its creation. Astro Boy aired on Channel 5, Mexico's third most important TV channel, from Televisa, likely the most important media company in all of Latin America. This detail will be important later. Astro Boy was a massive success with Mexican audiences, having reruns for over a decade. However, at the time, it was merely a curiosity. Anime was a very modern concept. It wasn't even called that in its native Japan, and still lacked many characteristics we now associate with the term. Nevertheless, it set an important precedent, and during the 70s, its impact began to show. During the 70s, Mexican television faced economic challenges and needed affordable content to fill its children's programming slots. The logical choice would have been to turn to their northern neighbor, which was already producing high-quality children's programming through studios like Disney, Warner, or Hanna-Barbera. However, these were very expensive and often unaffordable. That's when broadcasters, especially Televisa, looked back at Astro Boy's success and began importing various anime series like Kimba the White Lion, Princess Knight, and Speed Racer. These series found great success with Mexican audiences for two reasons: their treatment and their cost. To better understand these points, let's compare how anime began in the United States. Anime reached the USA from the medium's beginning, with Astro Boy arriving in 1963, the same year as its creation, followed by others like Tetsujin 28, known as Gigantor. While these were successful, they never deeply penetrated American popular culture for two main reasons. 1. There was still anti-Japanese sentiment due to World War II, something that didn't exist in Mexico, which never actively participated in the war. 2. The adaptation approach was different. Due to America's strong animation industry, they had little experience dubbing foreign content or adapting other cultures. When adapting Japanese works that contained stronger themes, like violence, that might be viewed negatively by some sectors of society, they were heavily censored or toned down. Voice acting for anime characters tended to be very cartoonish and frankly weird, as the reasoning was that since they were animations, they should sound like American cartoons. In Mexico, anime received very different treatment. Since Mexico had no significant animation industry, when foreign works like Disney or Warner Brothers needed dubbing in the 1940s to 1960s, they looked to their film industry for talent. Major US studios would fly in Mexican movie stars to dub their films, creating a star talent system. This influenced dubbing so significantly that Mexico became the largest producer of Spanish dubs with the biggest voice acting stars, to the point that voice actors Mario Castañeda and René Garcia, the voices of Goku and Vegeta respectively, are national celebrities. The impact of these early dubs was so profound that what's now known known as the neutral accent, used for most Latin American dubbing regardless of country, is based on how people from Mexico City spoke during the 1950s, where most dubbing was developed. This meant that anime received more mature treatment from the beginning. Additionally, since Mexico's most popular programs were telenovelas, which featured high continuity and sometimes violence, anime was better received and often left uncensored. The true rise of anime occurred in the 1990s, driven by changes like television privatization and the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, due to the neoliberal economic model pushed by the USA. This led to the sale of government channels Imevisión, including channels 7 and 13, which were acquired by Ricardo Salinas Pliego and later transformed into TV Azteca. The newly privatized broadcaster faced the challenge of filling its programming schedule, especially since it legally had to cover extensive broadcasting hours, but had limited resources for producing or acquiring content. However, Ricardo Salinas Pliego's luck turned when Japan began implementing a soft power propaganda strategy called Cool Japan. This strategy had proved highly successful in various markets, especially with the 1980s soap opera Ocean, which aired in 68 countries, despite dealing with sensitive subjects like the pre-World War II Japanese Empire. According to various surveys, this strategy improved views of Japan and its people in countries that had been under Japanese imperial control decades earlier. Quite impressive given Japan's wartime history. In this context, a representative from Bandai, yes, the same Bandai that makes your anime figures and video games, approached the newly acquired and renamed TV Azteca with an incredible offer. They would give them the anime Saint Seiya for free, which had already proven hugely successful, not only in Japan with huge ratings and the top-selling toy of Christmas 1987, featuring the figure of Aiolos, the Sagittarius saint, but also in Asian and European countries like Spain, France, and Italy. TV Azteca immediately accepted, but Bandai had conditions. First, the broadcaster had to promote Saint Seiya toys. Second, while not strictly required, Bandai suggested creating a children's programming block that would include anime alongside advertising for toys, products, and collectibles, potentially including more Bandai anime series. This led to the creation of a children's television block on Channel 7 called Caratelli. Following Saint Seiya's massive success in Mexico, thanks to its epic tone, superpowered battles, and high drama, other Bandai series like Sailor Moon, Slam Dunk, and The Vision of Escaflowne were added. While not the first, Caratelli became Mexico's most successful Saturday morning cartoon block, thanks to its novel content and free broadcast availability nationwide. The creation of this television block is crucial to understanding why Mexico is so obsessed with Dragon Ball. This block aired exclusively on Saturday mornings. While it might not have been the first Saturday morning cartoon block, it was undoubtedly the most successful in the country. Its success stemmed from its innovative content offerings and the fact that it was broadcasted on free-to-air TV, making it accessible to every household in the nation. Even though it wasn't explicitly labeled as anime at the time, since the concept was still quite novel in this part of the world, viewers could immediately sense a significant difference compared to everything else on television. Whether it was the animation techniques, the art style, the storytelling, or even the Japanese text visible on screen, audiences gradually became aware that what they were watching came from Japan. Over time, this led to a growing appreciation for Japanese stories in animated format. This interest eventually gave rise to a black market, where it was common to pay someone to make VHS copies of an anime. Sometimes, these copies were dubbed in Spanish from Spain, but more often, they were in English or another language entirely. If you were lucky, they had subtitles, but more often than not, they didn't. By airing anime, Caratelli became a juggernaut in Mexican children's television. In response to the threat posed by Caratelli on TV Azteca, Televisa, the largest television company in the Spanish-speaking world, and arguably all of Latin America, began airing anime on Channel 5, the second biggest TV channel in the country. It's important to note that this channel targets the whole family. Titles like Cardcaptor Sakura, Ranma 1/2, and finally Dragon Ball Z were added to their lineup. Prior to Dragon Ball Z, the original Dragon Ball had aired, as well as Zero and the Magic Dragon, the first version of Dragon Ball that hit mainland USA, made by Harmony Gold, which only adapted the first and third movie, as well as the initial episodes. However, in Mexico, for some unknown reason, the Zero version just didn't work. On the other hand, the original Dragon Ball series did find success, although it was still far from the phenomenon the franchise would later become. Dragon Ball Z began broadcasting in 1995 on free TV to all Mexican households, and quickly became an unprecedented success. Much has been written in English-speaking media about why Dragon Ball had and continues to have such success in Mexico. They often point to themes like companionship, sacrifice, and constant self-improvement, possibly relating these to Mexico's highly Catholic population. 4 out of 5 Mexicans identify as Roman Catholic. That being said, I am certain that the rural settings, similar to where many Mexicans lived, and the protagonist being someone who lives in a small house outside the city rather than being wealthy, likely added to its appeal, especially since Mexico isn't one of the richest countries. However, here's here's the thing. While these themes and imagery resonated strongly with Mexican audiences, perhaps more so than with other cultures, they succeed because they are nearly universal. Moreover, such comments overlook one simple fact. Dragon Ball was successful in virtually every country where it aired. Why? Because it's a darn cool story packed with fighting, comedy, drama, and adventure. Add a bit of romance, and you've got the whole package. No, if Dragon Ball is the giant it is today in Mexico, it's thanks to how it was broadcast and a happy accident that occurred during the airing of one of the most important moments in the storyline. But we'll talk about that in a minute. The anime was aired with excellent dubbing and minimal censorship, giving it a more mature feel that was novel for Mexican audiences. Thanks to all these factors, it became a ratings darling. Its success was so significant that the series wasn't limited to morning children's slots, but also aired during prime time, greatly expanding its reach and resonance. Because Mexican television was dominated by telenovelas, which aired new hour-long episodes every weekday, Dragon Ball followed a similar model, airing not one but 2 or even 3 new episodes daily. This gave audiences a mini-marathon to obsess over, essentially micro-binge watching that motivated constant viewing, which in turn helped create a fandom for the series. Due to how anime was acquired then, episodes were bought in groups, usually divided by seasons. But since Dragon Ball had no seasons in Japan, it ran continuously. The episode groups could end anywhere. Unfortunately for viewers then, Televisa's purchased group ended at episode 94, just before Goku's first transformation into the mythical Super Saiyan that had been teased for almost 100 chapters was shown. When Mexicans turned on their TVs the next day to see Goku become a Super Saiyan, the series instead restarted from chapter 1. To this day, I still hear this story from my older cousins and uncles. Children initially thought someone had played the wrong episode. Surely the next day would show episode 95, but it didn't. This event marked all 90s kids. However, since multiple episodes aired daily, in a couple of months, we reached episode 94 again. Anticipation was at its peak. Everyone was glued to their TVs, wondering if they'd finally see Goku's legendary transformation. Watch parties formed, similar to what would happen decades later for the Goku vs. Jiren fight. Everything stopped. At that moment, all that mattered was Dragon Ball. When the legendary opening Chala Head Chala played, sung by the legendary Ricardo Silva, rest in peace, that minute and a half was filled with fear that history would repeat itself. Another 2 months of rewatching the entire series, it was worse than homework or eating your vegetables. Then the opening ended and the title card appeared. Finally transformed, Son Goku, the legendary Super Saiyan. Cheers of joy echoed across Mexico. It shouldn't be a surprise that this episode broke viewing records in Mexico, not just for its channel, not just for children's television, not just for its time slot, but for all of Mexican television history up to that point. A children's cartoon made on the other side of the world, in a completely different language and culture, had conquered Mexican audiences like nothing before. Due to this success, Televisa continued repeating the series for years. As of 2024, it remains the most broadcast program in Mexican television after nearly 30 years, never leaving the airwaves or public consciousness. This allowed children who watched Dragon Ball in the 90s to share this beloved series with their own children when they became parents, and their children would do the same, as multiple generations of Mexicans fell in love with the adventures of Goku and his friends as they fight to save the world.